He waited until I was out of town visiting my sick mother to make his move. While I was gone, he changed the locks, packed up my belongings, and left a manila envelope taped to the front door, an eviction notice, with my own forged signature on the deed. The house was mine. I bought it 5 years before I even met him. Every brick, every square inch paid for with my sweat and sacrifice. But he didn't care. He thought marrying me meant he owned me and everything I had. What he didn't know is I had cameras, I had evidence, and I had a plan. Because the one thing he underestimated was how calm a woman gets when she's done being lied to. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. And if you've ever dealt with betrayal from someone you trusted, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. My name is Claire. I'm 34 years old. And this is the story of how the man I loved tried to steal the very foundation I built for myself, my home, and how I took everything back. Before I met Adam, I had spent nearly a decade rebuilding my life. After a messy breakup in my 20s, I moved to a small town, started a new job, and worked 2 positions at once just to keep my head above water. I didn't go out much, I didn't travel, I didn't buy fancy things. Instead, I saved. Slowly, painfully. And eventually, I bought my first home, a simple 2-bedroom cottage with old windows, squeaky floors, and a backyard full of wildflowers. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. No one helped me. No one co-signed. I bought it with my name, my money, my credit, and for the first time in years, I felt grounded. And then I met Adam. He was charming, attentive, the kind of man who texts you good morning before your alarm even goes off. He was different, or so I thought. He knew how much I loved my house, how hard I worked for it. He would say things like, "You built this all by yourself? That's incredible." And I'd blush, feeling proud and seen. We dated for 2 years before we got married. When he moved in, I never once thought to change anything legally. It was still my house. He was my husband, yes, but the home was bought long before him, and there was no reason to think that would ever matter. At first, things were good, normal, but over time, I noticed something strange. He started making little jokes like, maybe I should just put my name on the mailbox too, or what's mine is yours and what's yours is also mine, right? I'd laugh it off. I didn't want to seem controlling or paranoid, but the truth is, I felt it, the shift. The way he looked at the house, the way he'd answer the door and say, "Welcome to our home," with just a little too much emphasis on our. I started finding paperwork moved. Files on my desk shifted. One day, I couldn't find my original deed copy. Another time, a folder I kept in a locked drawer was mysteriously sitting out. When I asked Adam, he'd say I was being forgetful, or maybe the cleaning lady had misplaced it. I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. I wanted to trust him, after all. That's what marriage is built on, isn't it? Then came the weekend I left town. My mother had been in the hospital and I drove upstate to help her for a few days. I let Adam know I'd be gone from Thursday to Monday. I kissed him goodbye at the front door. He told me to drive safe. What I didn't know was that the moment I backed out of the driveway, he launched a plan he'd been quietly preparing for weeks. When I returned home Monday afternoon, everything changed. When I pulled into the driveway, I immediately noticed something was off. My garden hose had been moved. The trash bins were in the wrong place, and the curtains in the front room, my curtains, had been replaced with ugly beige ones I'd never seen before. My stomach dropped, but I told myself I was tired, overthinking, stress from the hospital. I grabbed my weekend bag, walked up to the porch, and tried to slide my key into the lock. It didn't fit. I paused, took a breath, tried again. Nothing. A cold wave washed over me. I knocked, then pounded. No answer. My hands started shaking as I called Adam's phone. It rang twice and went straight to voicemail. I called again, then again. Nothing. I walked around to the side door, also locked. Windows shut tight, no lights on. The place felt hollow and wrong, like a stranger had moved in while I was gone. Then I saw it. Thick manila envelope taped to the front door with my name scrawled across the front in black marker. Inside were documents, legal-looking forms, a typed letter saying I had been formally removed from the premises. The words blurred as I read them, but 3 things burned into my brain. My name misspelled, a forged signature, and his name on a new deed copy listing him as the sole owner. I felt like I was outside my body, reading someone else's nightmare. I called the police, told them my husband had locked me out of my own house, and presented forged documents. When the officers arrived, they treated me cautiously, like maybe it was just a marital dispute. I showed them my ID, my original mortgage statements, photos of me moving in years ago. They knocked on the door, no answer. One officer said, "Ma'am, if your name isn't on the current deed, there's not much we can do without a court order." And just like that, I became a guest on the sidewalk in front of the home I'd fought years to earn. I sat in my car for over an hour, stunned, numb. Eventually, I drove to a friend's house across town. That night, I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. But once the fog of shock started to clear, one thought burned hotter than the rest. How long had he been planning this? I started piecing things together, all the times he hovered when I checked the mail, the missing deed copy, the offhand jokes about co-ownership, the way he rushed to marry me without ever discussing a prenup, acting like it was unromantic to even bring it up. He didn't love me, he loved the security I represented. But what he didn't know, what he never took seriously, was that I wasn't just some gullible woman with a good heart. I kept backups, I had documentation, and I had cameras, security cameras, and those were about to become the key to everything. The next morning, I returned to the house. I didn't knock this time. I didn't call. I parked across the street and stayed in my car. I had no intention of going inside. I knew I couldn't. But I had something far more valuable waiting for me, my security system backup. Adam never bothered with the tech side of anything. He barely knew how to program the thermostat, let alone understand that the cameras I installed synced to cloud storage. He thought by pulling the visible doorbell cam, he'd erased all evidence. But the indoor hallway camera and back porch motion sensor, those were still running, and they caught everything. That night, I sat on my friend's couch, laptop open, watching footage that made my skin crawl. 2 days earlier, the day after I left town, Adam arrived with two men. One was a locksmith, the other, I realized with horror, was his friend Mike, a sleazy type he'd once jokingly called his go-to guy for shortcuts. I watched as the locksmith drilled out my front door lock. Mike laughed and pointed toward the house, and then, as casually as if they were moving into a rental, they began dragging boxes of my things outside. Books, furniture, even framed photos of my parents. Worse still, later that day, Adam was filmed sitting at the kitchen table, forging my signature on a document. I paused the footage there, my hands clenched so tight they turned white. He didn't just cross a line, he burned the bridge behind him and danced on the ashes. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was premeditated theft, fraud, and betrayal, all committed by the man who once looked me in the eye and vowed to protect me forever. I backed up the footage to 3 separate USB drives. One went into my purse, one into a safe deposit box, and one I planned to deliver to the lawyer I was calling first thing Monday morning. But there was more. I combed through our shared documents, found messages between Adam and Mike that had been left open on our shared tablet because Adam never remembered to clear his logins. They joked about flipping the house, about finding a tenant by next month. Mike had even said, worst case, she tries to fight it, just stall until it's sold. He planned to sell the house. My house. I felt something shift inside me. Not rage, not despair, something quieter, colder. Like a part of me had finally gone still, and in that stillness, I felt power. This wasn't just about getting my house back anymore. It was about making sure he'd never do this to anyone again. First thing Monday morning, I walked into a lawyer's office with a folder full of damning evidence, a steel resolve, and no intention of playing nice anymore. The lawyer, Ms. Grant, didn't sugarcoat anything. What he did, she said, flipping through the documents and watching the video I brought, is criminal. You're dealing with forged signatures, unlawful eviction, and possibly attempted property theft. He's banking on the fact that most people don't fight back. But you've got everything. She was right. I had dates, footage, copies of the forged deed, and even chat logs that tied Adam directly to the plan. Most importantly, I still had the original deed, the real one, filed and notarized years before Adam even came into my life. My name was the only one on it. No joint ownership, no loopholes, just mine. Ms. Grant moved fast. Within 24 hours, she sent Adam a cease and desist letter demanding immediate surrender of the property, listing all the charges we were preparing to file. It wasn't just civil, it was potentially criminal, especially with the forged signature and the break in with the locksmith. She told me men like him bank on intimidation. They count on you being too shocked to act. But now, he's the one who should be scared. And he was. Because by Wednesday, I got the first text in over a week from Adam, all caps, full panic. What are you doing? You're taking this too far. We can talk. Too far? He tried to evict me from my own home while I was across the state caring for my dying mother. He'd forged legal documents, tossed my belongings like trash, and planned to sell the house before I even knew what was happening. Now that I was fighting back with the law on my side, he wanted to talk. I didn't respond. Instead, I filed for an emergency injunction through Ms. Grant, legally barring him from selling, renting, or inhabiting the house. Then I filed a police report with the evidence in hand. It wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about documenting everything. By the end of the week, the police had officially opened an investigation, but it was the silence that followed that told me everything I needed to know. Adam had expected tears. He'd expected begging, maybe even a compromise. What he never expected was that I'd fight with facts, with strategy, and with the quiet, merciless calm of a woman who was done being taken for granted. I wasn't falling apart. I was building a case. And Adam had no idea how much worse it was about to get. I didn't go public out of spite. I went public because I was tired of being painted as the unstable one in the shadows while Adam played the victim to anyone who'd listen. He was already spreading lies to his family, our mutual friends, even our neighbors, telling them I'd gone off the rails. I was trying to kick him out of our home, that he was just trying to protect his rights. So I posted the truth. Just one post, just the facts, a calm, direct explanation with no emotional outburst, no name calling, just the house was mine. I bought it before the marriage. He forged my signature on a quitclaim deed while I was out of town, attempted to evict me illegally, and I was pursuing legal action with full documentation. I attached the letter from my lawyer, the police report number, and a screenshot of the security footage time-stamped with the locksmith's van in my driveway. I didn't tag him. I didn't have to. The post exploded. Hundreds of comments, dozens of shares, women telling me they'd gone through similar betrayals, men expressing shock that anyone would stoop that low. A few even found the listing Adam had tried to prepare to sell the house and flagged it. It didn't take long for word to spread. His phone blew up. I know because he tried calling me 6 times in 2 hours. Then came the messages, "Please take it down, we can fix this. You're making me look bad. This is between us, not the whole world." But no, Adam, you made it public the second you tried to rewrite reality behind my back. You don't get to commit fraud and then cry privacy when the truth comes out. And truth has a way of making people uncomfortable, especially when they've lived in lies for too long. His sister messaged me privately to apologize. She said, "I'm so sorry." He told us a completely different version. I had no idea. Some of our couple friends dropped off completely. Others reached out in quiet support. But my favorite moment, the landlord of Adam's friend, the one he was crashing with, called to inform him he was violating the lease agreement by having Adam stay there long term. Apparently, someone had tipped him off anonymously. Wonder who that was. Suddenly, Adam wasn't just losing public favor. He was losing options. Fast. He tried to spin it. He told anyone who would listen that I was ruining his life. But every time he spoke, I stayed silent and let the paper trail speak for me. Because the truth, it doesn't need to scream, it just needs to be documented. And by the end of the week, Adam learned a brutal truth of his own. When you try to destroy someone's foundation, don't be surprised when they bury you with the bricks. The day of the hearing, I wore gray slacks, a navy blazer, and the quietest confidence I've ever felt in my life. My lawyer met me at the courthouse steps, folder in hand, calm and ready. She smiled and said, "Don't worry, he's already lost. Today is just paperwork." Adam showed up 10 minutes late, wrinkled shirt, no tie, hair disheveled like he hadn't slept properly in days. And maybe he hadn't. The expression on his face wasn't guilt, it was annoyance. He looked at me like I had inconvenienced him, like I was the one who'd gone too far. Even as we sat across the courtroom from each other, his eyes searched for sympathy. But I had none left to give. The judge was direct. She read through the documentation, verified the timeline, and paused noticeably when my lawyer handed over the copy of the locksmith invoice with Adam's name on it. The footage we provided was burned onto a disc and logged as evidence, showing him instructing the locksmith to change the locks. While I was 300 miles away, holding my mother's hand in a hospital room, then came the forged deed. Adam squirmed as the judge questioned him directly. Mr. Langley, did you personally sign this quitclaim deed? His voice cracked. Yes, but she gave me permission. Did she sign this form herself, in person, before a notary? No, but she said it was fine. The judge raised her hand. That will be all. You could hear a pin drop. She ruled quickly. The quitclaim deed was invalid. I was the sole legal owner of the house. Adam was to vacate the premises immediately and was restricted from re-entering the property. My lawyer filed a motion for legal fees and the judge approved it on the spot. Adam had to pay for every hour of my lawyer's time. As we stepped outside the courtroom, he tried one last time. He caught up to me on the steps, arms out like he still had the right to touch me. Can we talk? Just us. I didn't even stop walking. Talk to my lawyer, I said flatly. That was the last time I ever saw him in person. And even though the battle wasn't over emotionally, financially, logistically, in that moment I knew I'd won something bigger than a legal fight. I'd reclaimed my voice, my power, my peace. Because he tried to evict me from my own home, but I'd already evicted him from my life. The days after the court ruling were strangely quiet. No more surprise knocks on the door, no texts begging or blaming, no whispers of manipulation, just silence. For the first time in months, I could walk through my own house without flinching at the sound of the front door or wondering what new disaster was waiting for me. But that silence, it wasn't peace at first, it was grief. I wasn't just mourning a marriage, I was mourning the illusion I had lived inside for too long. Adam hadn't just lied to me, he'd lied about me, about who I was, what I deserved, and how easily I could be replaced, erased, manipulated. There were moments I sat on the edge of my bed and just cried, not because I wanted him back, but because I couldn't believe I had once loved someone who was capable of this, someone who looked me in the eyes, shared meals, touched my skin while plotting to steal the roof over my head behind my back. I remember opening the storage closet one afternoon and finding a box labeled wedding photos. I pulled it down, sat on the floor, and stared at the smiling faces. His hand around my waist, our friends clapping, the stupid just married sign on the back of his old car. And then I ripped them up, every single one. I didn't burn them in some dramatic act. I just quietly shredded them into tiny, useless pieces and tossed them in the trash. It wasn't revenge, it was release. I began changing the house. I painted the hallway, replaced the old rug, donated anything we'd bought together that made my skin crawl. I reclaimed the space inch by inch until it stopped feeling haunted. People started reaching out too, friends who had stayed silent during the drama but now offered support. Even Adam's cousin messaged me privately to say, "You did the right thing. He's always been this way. We just didn't think he'd go that far." And slowly I started to forgive myself. Not for trusting him, because trust isn't a weakness, but for staying quiet too long, for shrinking myself to keep the peace, for doubting my instincts when they were screaming at me to run. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about never again letting someone else decide how much space I was allowed to take up in my own life. The first real breath of fresh air didn't come from outside, it came from inside me. It was a random Tuesday afternoon. I had just finished rearranging the living room, moved the couch to face the window instead of the television, added a few plants, swapped the old coffee table with one I built myself from reclaimed wood. I sat there, alone, sipping tea, the sun pouring in, and I smiled. Not a forced smile, a real one. Because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was living. It wasn't all smooth, of course. Adam still tried to mess with my head from a distance. He posted things on social media, passive-aggressive quotes, pictures of him looking happy, vague captions like "the truth always comes out." But I didn't respond, not publicly, not privately. I blocked him everywhere. I stopped giving him any access to my energy. And that was the ultimate power move. I started therapy too. I needed someone to help me untangle the emotional knots he'd left behind. My therapist didn't just validate my pain, she helped me name the patterns: gaslighting, coercive control, financial abuse, words I'd never thought applied to me, but fit too perfectly once I understood them. That's when the healing deepened, when I realized it wasn't just about him. It was about me reclaiming the parts of myself I had buried to make the relationship work. I began journaling again, walking every morning, sleeping better, eating real meals, not just whatever I could microwave between emotional breakdowns. And I started saying yes to life again. Small invitations, friendly coffee catch-ups, trying that pottery class I always said I didn't have time for. Slowly, the woman I used to be, the one with dreams and boundaries and fire in her belly, started coming back. And something shifted in the house, too. It stopped feeling like a battlefield. The walls didn't echo his lies anymore. The rooms weren't heavy with memory. It felt like mine again, a place of strength, a home. What Adam tried to steal from me wasn't just property, it was agency, autonomy, identity. But what he didn't know is you can't evict a woman from her own soul. Not anymore. It's strange how betrayal rearranges everything: your future, your faith, your very sense of self. But when the dust settles and the noise fades, you're left with one thing: truth. And the truth was, I never lost my power. I just forgot how much of it I had. Adam didn't destroy me, he revealed me. He exposed the parts of me that were too forgiving, too accommodating, too afraid to speak up. And in doing that, he handed me the greatest gift: clarity. I had spent years living on mute, shrinking to keep the peace, letting his needs outweigh my own, telling myself that being a good wife meant tolerating too much. But now I understand that love without respect is just control in disguise. He forged my name on a deed and tried to kick me out of the home I built. But what he really tried to erase was my independence, and he failed spectacularly. Kept my house, but more importantly, I reclaimed my voice. I no longer live in fear of confrontation or discomfort or being labeled difficult. If being difficult means defending my boundaries, honoring my worth, and refusing to be manipulated again, then I'll wear that label like armor. People still ask me how I found the strength to fight back. The truth is, I didn't know I had it until I was cornered, until I was forced to choose between losing everything quietly or standing up loudly and risking it all. And I chose the latter, not just for the house, for myself. So, to anyone listening who's ever been made to feel small, unworthy, or powerless, you are none of those things. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to rewrite your story. I did, and I'm not going back. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and leave a comment telling us how you found your voice after someone tried to take it from you. And if you're still in the middle of your own storm, don't forget, your story isn't over. You are stronger than the worst thing that happened to you. Subscribe for more real stories of strength, survival, and sweet, sweet justice.